This is the first in the series of taking our good photography to great photography. It was a challenge to me to be thinking that way many years ago in several different stages, but I had good photographs. There are still some photographs I look at today and I really like them. I still like them a lot. I probably starting around 8 years old. Then I was an older teenager starting to finish high school or getting into college. I always had a camera in my hand. So that would be challenge number one I have for you is always have your camera available. Don't bury it in your purse or in a bag that you're carrying around with you or whatever you're keeping your camera in, just backpack or your pocket even. It can be a challenge to get it out and to take a shot of what you see. Sometimes the shot you see may be very, very quick and fleeting. Just have your camera ready and take that snapshot or that quick photograph and always be ready. I want to try and keep this video short because it's between Christmas and New Year's, and even if you're watching this after New Year's, we probably don't have a lot of time to get stuff done. 2 things to improve your photography. We are taking our photography from where we are currently shooting, the level of skill that we currently have, and we're wanting to move it up at least a level. So we're trying to get to great from our good. So this is a leveling up of this versus that kind of situation. So we will be taking our photography from good to great, and this will be the first video of it. So the first thing we want to talk about, almost every camera I see and know of has exposure as one of its primary things that it sets for everybody to change. Some of the point and shoot cameras that we see or have used have a little slider button, or maybe 2 buttons that hinge in the middle for wide angle or close up. So use the settings that you have for adjusting your exposure, because some of these cameras are going to adjust the exposure as you zoom in and out. So it's going to change almost every time you move the camera. It's going to be constantly valuing and measuring the amount of light it sees and the amount of light around the thing that you're trying to image. So make sure that you know exactly where your buttons are to change your exposure. The exposure is how dark or how light that photo is. So make sure that you have your fingers on the adjusting buttons, ready to move them and adjust as you need it. That's for point and shoot cameras. Your more professional line of cameras are going to have a wheel or a knob that you're going to spin or twist, which will adjust your exposure. And on iPhones or smartphones, usually there is a box that tells you that the camera sees something and is focusing on that area. When I know, at least an iPhone, when you tap on what you are seeing, it'll focus on where you tap. But then on the iPhone, it has like a little sun type of icon out to the right of it. And if you move your finger up, just tap on it and move up, or tap on your finger, tap on the screen with your finger and move down, that allows you to adjust your exposure brighter or darker. On the iPhone, if you tap on the top and move down, that causes your exposure to get darker. If you tap at the bottom and move your finger up, that will cause your image or the photo you want to take, the exposure you see, to adjust up. Now, again, I mentioned that it does the auto exposure on there, so be sure that when you get it adjusted, take your picture fairly quickly without shaking a lot. It's a lot to fit in there, but make sure to adjust your exposure. Now, the other thing I want you to focus on and to think about when you're adjusting your exposure is make sure that your object that you're photoing or imaging is not too bright and not too dark. We want to get, I'm going to refer to this as the Goldilocks ratio, and we're going to be talking about some other technical details, so don't get confused in locking in that this is the only Goldilocks ratio. We're talking about this versus that, right? So we don't want our chair to be too big. We don't want our chair to be too small. We want the chair to be just right. In this regard, with that illustration of the Goldilocks ratio, we want our image not to be too bright. We want our image not to be too dark. We want it to be just right. So play with it. When you are seeing that picture on your phone, maybe think about where it's going to end up. point number 3. So not just knowing how to adjust the exposure on your photographs, but also knowing where your object is and that its exposure is just right. But think about where it's going to be used. Is it going to be seen of the majority of the time on a bigger screen? Perhaps it's going to be a little bit better seen than on your phone or your camera that you're looking at it. Almost every LCD screen, even on professional cameras, it's really, really hard to tell whether something is properly exposed or in focus on that LCD screen on the back of the camera. It's almost always better to look at it on a computer. Now, at least look at that photograph on some other screen other than the screen on your camera or your phone. But if it's something you're taking on your phone and it looks great on your phone and it's meant for a background on your phone, do that. There's no need to take it off screen, because then when you adjust it for that screen, it's not going to look the same on your phone. Every photo that I take on my computer, having edited from taking it on my phone or other cameras, and I adjust it to where it looks really good on the computer screen, and then I put it back on the device like my phone for a background, it always makes it more contrasted or looking dense, like it's too contrasted or too much black in the photograph or whatever. So the purpose of your shooting and making sure it's exposed properly to what it looks good to your eye, make sure that it is going to look good on that format. So maybe at this point, if you want to shoot images and have them on your phone as a mobile portfolio, or if you just want to take pictures right now and get good at taking good photographs for your phone backgrounds, do that. Shoot for the media that it's going to. That's major point number 2, outside of, but within the idea or the thought of exposure. Make sure that you're setting the exposure properly so that whatever you're looking at, whatever your eye is drawn to, is properly exposed. For instance, let me give you a little bit of an illustration. I was going to do this video earlier this morning to where one of the only things that was lit up in the background or anything anywhere in front of me, the only thing you would really see is the tree. Now, there's another light in our living room where I'm filming here, and that is the light that you see up behind me, and that's kind of making the wall go to a white. That's our light in the corner of our entryway. So that point being is I make sure that the lighting is good enough to expose my face, but also there's lighting enough to not create a shadow of me against my background, but also not too bright of a light to wash my face out or cause really dark shadows in my eyes. Just some real quick ideas, thoughts. Think about exposure. It's one of the first things we're going to be coming up against when we talk about good photos, is making sure that they're not too dark, which kind of make it look hazy and dirty or dusty in some instances. But the other side is that it's not too bright and looks, as one of the phrases that we use is washed out, that there aren't too many overexposed areas. The important part of it here, we'll learn about how to draw people's eye to the intended object, but we're going to get that later on. Right now we just need to work on some of the basics of exposure, making sure that the object of the photograph is in proper exposure, so that way we can start learning and playing around with other things, making sure that what we don't want seen is either underexposed or overexposed, drawing our eye to that little just right Goldilocks zone of that object where it sits, so that it draws people's eye to that object and keeps their attention. All right, y'all have a great one. Happy New Year. So subscribe, click that bell so that you don't miss any videos coming up, and get ready for your photographs and your videos to go from good to great.